We're going to turn now to the former U.S. ambassador to Israel, who's have a number of times here during the course of this conflict. Tom Nides is familiar to many of you viewers as vice chairman of Blackstone. We're talking to him in his capacity as a longtime public servant. And I think last we spoke, Tom, you were in Israel. Good to catch up with you once again. And I want to start with you in this post from the president as well. There's a line in it at the end here that the country of Israel joins me in the commitment the president has made here to take a pause, not to pursue more aggressive military action at this point. I'm curious what your latest read of this conflict is. We were talking just a moment ago about how stuck things seem to be, the frustration the president has with that. How do you read where things stand right now?
Well, first of all, I'm a little bit concerned about following your bougie water segment prior to this, so hopefully I'll be a little bit more.
And thank you for watching.
I watched it, I saw it, so I'm not sure I can afford $4 water, but I'll work on that. So let's step back for a minute. Listen, first of all, my hope is that the escalation of this stops, because clearly the president knows, and quite frankly, the Iranians know, that the only solution here is a diplomatic solution. So what is for sure we all understand is a military solution on its own won't work. And I think that the president, as he begins to continue to be in this bit of a cul-de-sac in which we hit Iran hard, they hit our U.S. targets hard, our allies don't like it, oil prices continue to go up, so he finds himself in a very untenable situation. The unfortunate part about the Iranians know that. And so as someone who has spent time dealing with the Iranian negotiations, I understand they're quite smart, contrary to what many people think. The negotiators, some of the same negotiators that we dealt with in 2015, they understand the president does not want to escalate this if he can avoid it. And they're pushing the president to the brink. And I think ultimately the president is going to attempt to try to get a diplomatic solution.
I think is this a Truth Social that just posted that we've been sent from the control room? It looks, oh, I'm sorry, this is a quote from Rubio talking about regime change, because that's another thing that we heard kind of at the onset of this conflict was a goal from the White House, saying that they wanted to do a regime change. And we're still hearing that. We had some folks last week saying, you know, as more and more pressure gets put on the population, there is this hope that they will rise up against the regime. But I wanted your take on whether or not that's anything but aspirational at this point, because you have a regime that even the administration has admitted is willing to endure extreme pain and doesn't really care how much of the pain goes onto the population. They also seem more entrenched than ever. And if you have a beleaguered, starving, and concerned population, folks I've spoken to, a family in Tehran, say their family's not even there anymore. They're in the mountains. They're trying to get out of the way from these assaults. Is regime change really a viable option at this point?
This is not going to happen. The reality of this is that as much as all of us would like to see it happen, and someone who's spent a bunch of time in different administrations, there are 90 million people who live in Iran. The Iranian regime is basically organized by 1 million strong IRGC officials. Listen, could things get worse for the people in Iran, and could they rise up? Sure. But I think ultimately today, contrary to what the Prime Minister of Israel was telling the president, and the president's desire to see a regime change, that today is not happening. And I think everyone understands that to be fact. Would we like to happen? Would we like this to be Venezuela? Some people would think, sure, why not? But it's not a world of practical. What's practical is to get the Iranians back to the table, try to get the Strait of Hormuz back open. To be clear, it was open before the war started, getting it back open, attempt to try to get our inspectors inside Iran. And to be clear, I've said this multiple times before, if tomorrow President Trump was delivered the agreement that we actually negotiated in 2015 and said, Mr. President, here is the deal that you could sign today. I believe, and to be clear, that deal was not perfect. With the JCPOA, it was not perfect. I bet you a lot of money that the president would be more than happy to sign that agreement. That is not happening. We're not going back to that agreement. So my view of this is we need to understand the only way this is going to get solved is a negotiation. with the parties involved and our allies involved, including the Saudis, the Qataris, the Kuwaitis, yes, the Pakistanis, and try to get this deal done, that will solve this at least for the short term.
Tom, we had David Remnick of The New Yorker on the show yesterday. We were talking about the war, talking about Gadi Eisenkot and sort of the political situation in Israel. And he brought up an interesting point, which is Benjamin Netanyahu needs this war to continue politically. President Trump couldn't wait for it to end. He wants to see it end as quickly as he can see it end here because of the political considerations he has here in the U.S. I look at this reporting by Dan Lamothe in the Washington Post, the head of European Command privately warning the Pentagon this week he lacks sufficient naval forces to continue protecting Israel from incoming ballistic missiles, sent a message to that effect to the Pentagon. I'm curious if you agree with what David said, what David Remnick said there, the way in which Israelis are still behind this war and how they're watching what's happening here with the President of the United States.
Well, first of all, Dave's a great journalist, so obviously I too share a lot of his views. However, I think here's what's happened here. Obviously, I know the Prime Minister, obviously, yes, he's in the middle of an election, which is happening in October. The problem is the Israeli people are upset. Both the liberal Jews and the conservative Jews, they were told that this war, there was a price to be paid, but the benefits would be substantial to the Israeli people. And unfortunately, for right or for wrong, good or for bad, that hasn't come through yet. There's still, they've spent an enormous amount of anxiety up north in Israel. Just 2 weeks ago, multiple concerns about going back in and out of shelters. Clearly, the war has not subsided. We still have these proxies going on. So the Israeli people are disappointed. And you know what happens when voters are disappointed? They go and voice that anxiety against the leadership. So the Prime Minister is, in fact, suffering from that right now. Mm-hmm. Who knows what happens in the election? Obviously, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and as you know. But at the end of the day, the Prime Minister's got himself in what the British would call a sticky wicket. Uh-huh. He would obviously like to see how I threw that in there, guys? But I think does he want the war to continue? I think he wants to prove to the Israeli voters that he has got this under control, and he's working on their behalf. Right now, he has not accomplished that.